put it in here whenever you want. I mean, we're not going to use all the time, so
Yeah.
we're not pushing for time. Make sure everybody's going to get here is going to get here, so
Yeah.
that's fine.
All right, everyone. As you all know, Dr. B will not be here today, so we have Justin Teeter, project manager at DPR, and Ruben Cheatham, head of pre-construction at DPR. And I assume you all heard of DPR Construction. They're currently doing a College of Business here at Clemson. So they'll share their perspective, the contractor perspective, and their role in construction development. And so they'll do a presentation, and you can ask questions at the end. But if you have a quick question, if you didn't understand anything, just ask Justin or Cheatham. So Justin.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having us. I hope we built this to the level that that helps y'all. You know, trying to manage expectations of what Dr. Bausman laid out for us. But if so, we're going to try to keep it at somewhat of a high level, what we think is a high level, and then dig as deep as y'all want. And we definitely won't take the whole time. I don't think we can fill that space. We might put ourselves to sleep, I think. But we'll go through it and then deep dive into anything you want more information on, if that works. And like Taneen said, Taneen has been an intern for us for a few semesters on and off, in through the summers and then even part-time during the school year. But again, Ruben is our head of our pre-con department in Greenville. And more than that, he's also when our bosses, the heavy hitters within our company need something special done on a top secret, data center. They call Ruben. So he's the go-to guy for all that. And I am the project manager currently on the College of Business project. So that's just a little bit more about who we are. So hopefully we give you some things to think about. Is this class mainly, is everybody finishing up this year, last semester, or y'all have another year, or is it a mixed group? Mixed. It's good. Okay. Well, we'll just get into it then, and y'all stop us. But we got plenty of time at the end too for questions. We're going to try to hit three primary topics that Dr. Bausman asked us to talk about, and that's touch on contract delivery methods and a little bit about the difference between design bid build and CM at risk, which most of the work that we do is CM at risk based, and our perspective will be today almost exclusively from a CM at risk perspective. Second, we want to provide or we want to talk about contractor services that we provide the owner. That's both during pre-construction and construction, primarily on pre-construction. And then talk a little bit about, at the end, the different types of owners that y'all will be working for, entities, whether it be developers or different owner types, different builder owner types. So to get started, delivery methods. The design bid build. Y'all may know this, but as I repeat things, just I had to start from somewhere. But design bid build. I got a picture of a quick trip here, just for example of the way I think of design bid build. It's the traditional method. Owner pays architect or design team to design, and then put it out on the street to bid, get the lowest bid, and pay that contractor to build. It's a tried and true method for what I think of as traditional buildings that may or may not be, or may not be very complex in nature, both technical, building wise, or Quick Trip. I mean, they've built thousands of them, so there's historical data out there. We know what it's going to be, and there's not much reason to get fancy with the delivered method. Some of the downsides to this, depending if you start to get over into more complex projects, there is a potential for design owner team not being disconnected from the builder. We don't get involved until the design is pretty much complete and it's out to bid, and that could be a downside potentially, depending on the complexity. Budget's not validated until bid day, so if the building gets designed, lots of resources spent, time and money with your architect designing something. You may not know you're over budget until way down the line, and then you're starting over if you hit a roadblock like that. So that can cause issues. There is change management risk. Lots of change orders. It's change order driven because the builders are low bid on bid day, and procurement process. You typically open up the bidding process to just anybody and everybody. That can happen, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can get some people with a low bid, and you have to maybe, depending on your entity type, trying to either disqualify somebody that you're not real comfortable with going to contract with. And then on the other side, CM at risk. Just got pictures thrown in here of different things, but that's College of Business right there. Definitely a CM at risk, project type. Typically, it's developed. The contractor comes on board during pre-construction to provide services during pre-construction that Ruben will talk about later. But contract between owner and CM with a stated fee. So we'll be brought on to develop a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price usually, during design, providing feedback during that design to make sure and manage to the budget. These are more common, and it's more of a partnership relationship between contractor, designer, and owner, and you get the benefits there of being more of an integrated team. There's more transparency because my contract with the owner is not a lump sum where I'm trying to make as much within that, reduce my costs to increase my profits. It's more, I have a stated fee, percentage based usually, 2, 3, 5%, whatever it is. So I have nothing really to hide. So that transparency is a more comfortable situation in a lot of times where I can open it to the owner and say, here's how we're spending your money. And I have nothing to protect. They're better for complex projects and fast track projects when you need to get the builder on board as fast as possible to start procuring, building the schedule, and getting something done quickly. So for the section, that's the two contract types that we wanted to talk about. Services that we provide to the owner during pre-construction. Here's a list of let's say typical deliverables that almost every owner will be expecting from us for their pre-construction services. Benchmarking, market trends, pre-qualification of subcontractors, vetting them for safety record, financial stability, make sure that we're basically managing risk for the owner, and making sure that we avoid disaster in a way. They'll often ask for a very rough order magnitude budget estimate, whether it's say it's Clemson going to the state for funding, something we don't even have a drawing, we just know square footage and what building type it is. So that might be the first estimate provided, a schedule of what the project should take, and then I'd say at a minimum estimate checks at SD, DD, and CD. That's schematic design, design development or detailed design, and construction documents. And you probably understand why would be those iterative or periodic estimates. Make sure that the design is tracking to what the known budget is. So at SD, if the architect's been designing all kinds of things that they can't afford, hopefully we know it then and we can adjust course and get back into range. Or Maybe the opposite. I've never seen it, but maybe there's, where they're low and we get to, add some things to the design. Usually what happens is you're in some capacity over budget or somewhere you want to look for cost savings, and you roll into value engineering. You probably heard that term maybe a lot, or maybe just a couple times, but going through the exercise of cutting out things that we can do smarter, quicker, just accomplish the same goals hopefully, but on a cheaper basis. Also they'll be looking for constructability reviews. Make sure that especially structural wise, make sure what the structural engineer draws is something that's practical and doesn't throw their money away, where he builds something that I didn't come up with an example, but there's a lot of ways that we can just build the same thing smarter with small adjustments, and that's what yields from the constructability reviews a lot of time. Just make sure it's practical and not a waste of resources to get something built. And then you're rolling into buyout. Once the design's nailed down, everything's go, pre-construction team will start the buyout process. And Ruben's going to go a little bit more detailed on the pre-construction phase, because I think that feels like the emphasis for our piece here today within your overall course. You want me to flip these for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've prepared a couple slides here, just give you a taste of what pre-con is. It's definitely evolved over my career. I've been in pre-construction pretty much my entire construction career, so I've seen it go from a traditional roll up the plan, slide it under the door to the estimator, and he gives you an estimate, right? And we give it to the project team, and they go build it once the owner approves the budget. So that's probably what you have a kind of envision pre-construction being like. But I can tell you it's different today, and it's going to be different in the future, because we're getting away from that in this industry. More collaboration is what you're going to see in these slides. More working as a team, more working with the goal, the end goal in mind, versus just a price, slitting somebody and working through VE. So this I wanted to add a little bit of some sketches here to give you an idea of what I mean by collaboration. So this is a simple tire swing project where you've got all these players, all these represent different parts of the team, and in the end, the customer, all he really wanted was a tire swing, but this was the perception of everybody else. So as you'll see, what we try to do in pre-con is get everybody together so we know that this is what we got to do, and that everybody's looking to build that tire swing. So what we do at DPR, and again, this is not the sell DPR in any way, but just give you some excellence in pre-construction from what we believe is important. So we kind of use these 5 what we call pillars of pre-construction, but it gives you a taste of what we have in pre-con and what we try to do on our projects. So for this course, for this lecture series on the role of the contractor for the developer, but for any client, is to do these things, to be an ally, to work hand in hand. If they've got, they got a question or concern, be able to talk through that, be able to walk through that. They trust you. The clairvoyant, be able to look into the future. Coronavirus is a good example, since that's in everybody's text line and emails and news. But be able to look at that and see how that's going to affect the market pricing in the future. That's a clairvoyant. Detective, again, being able to look at the building renovation is a good example. So if we were demoing this room, being able to identify some things for the owner that could possibly be missed by the design team or by the construction team. A scientist, again, being able to go work through numbers and design and really just kind of putting it all together as you envision a nerdy scientist being. And then being a conductor, again, not being the true leader of the entire group, but being able to work with the team and say, hey, this is what we need to make these dates happen and make these deliverables occur. So I didn't want to get into the weeds about how we do things into each step, but I did want to kind of add to what Justin was talking about from a traditional approach. So again, with the design, bid, build process, it's very simple. You design it, you do the pre-con, then you do the construction, right? It's very simple, but as you can tell, this is really segmented. So you got the design team working, you've got the pre-con team working, you've got the construction team working. So there's really not any collaboration there. So what we do, which really helps kind of the end goal of building a project, is we take all the different aspects that you see of the project, and then we kind of, mix it all together to get one integrated approach. So again, not reading all the different things that happen, but again, really just not working in a vacuum like you saw on the previous slide. Again, some data you really can't read. The intent is not to be able to go through these numbers, but this is what being a pre-construction partner is. It's being able to take data from areas. We call this market conditions report. So if you're working with a developer, if you're working with an owner, being able to give them cost trends, being able to explain to them what is going on in our market that will help project if they're doing a pro forma or they're doing multiple projects. I mean, this kind of data, being able to share with them is extremely important for a lot of our customers.
Because that's, I mean, if you think about it, sometimes Ruben's group has to work as consultant. I mean, pre-con doesn't always, or maybe 50% or some percentage of the time, Ruben's working not on a big project that is going through the normal phases. He's just being asked for just pre-construction services, act as consultant, tell me what's going on in the marketplace, so that that owner, if he didn't have us to call on and pay for our services, he would have to have somebody dedicated inside, a resource dedicated in-house or otherwise to go get this stuff. And so a lot of Ruben's time is current clients, future clients, and just current clients calling to get checkups on, hey, what if I do it this way? What if I, build with this technique? How much is it costing me per square foot these days? And so Ruben's taking a lot of those calls.
Yeah, so really, historical costing and market pricing, like Tanine, I'm sure you use, all these ENR and some other cost, RS means, everybody's probably familiar with that. But an owner's not going to typically not going to dive into that kind of information. They're expecting the pre-con team or Justin or whoever. So being bullet smart, being able to answer those questions when they call and say, hey, can you give me some cost data, on a building, right? This is what I'd like to build. And this is fuzzy for a reason, but wanted to kind of give you, this is a Model-Logics program that stores a lot of our data in for projects in different areas, and it area adjusted, but not to get in the details of it. But we use this data to be able to share with customers to say, hey, look, here's your price point here for your project, and it's in the middle of what we would expect.
What are these? These are trades or disciplines, right?
Yeah, disciplines.
Masonry, different divisions of the work.
Yeah, right. So this may be electrical, for example. So if his point was here, I mean, that's right in mid-range. If it was up here, it's still within range, but he's probably got some really nice lighting controls or something. And if that point was, somewhere down here, we're probably missing something, right? So really kind of giving an idea that in a CM at risk from pre-con standpoint, this is the kind of information that we're sharing versus just giving a price, for the space. Here's an example of a recent project that we proposed here on campus. Unfortunately, we weren't successful, but this gives you a really good example of something that we do it's real life. I mean, this is, Justin talked about the estimate part of it. So you can see here we always display our estimates in a nice visual, again, to be able to explain cost. It's not just a report that has a dollar figure at the bottom line. Has a nice image, some nice bars to be able to show where they're spending their money. But then we try to break things down in a way that's very appealing to the owner, but yet has some substance to it. So for this one, we tried to bucket the monies into the segments of the project. And again, Justin talked about the transparency, so we always promote the transparent piggy bank. It's kind of silly and elementary, but it kind of proves the CMAR process, which is, you know, the piggy bank's clear, right? So you can't hide the monies, and then it's not full because we realize that the state or whoever, the owner, doesn't have an endless supply of money. So a lot of dates on here and bars. It's kind of confusing for most people, but it gives you a kind of a comparison of what Justin was talking about. So the traditional, the schedule up top kind of shows the traditional route. So you see a lot of design and price, design and price, design and price. It goes through those different iterations, and then ultimately you get to the end, and you still may be doing some value engineering that Justin talked about. But really, what we propose on a lot of projects is the cost-informing design method. So as you can see, it's a seamless process throughout the whole time. You're not doing these design iterations where you're just completely stopping to do a cost study. You're kind of doing it with the design team. So you're also able to procure early. Again, getting a little bit of the weeds there. But what ultimately it does is it really saves time that goes back to what the fast track process is. But again, through this process, you should always know what your costs are for the project and your total budget. On value management is what we call it. It's VE, is value engineering. It's what a lot of common lingo in the market is. But this kind of gives you an idea of what that means. So this doesn't have cost to it. A lot of them do. But what we try to do is analyze each scope of the work, break it down, and give the customer some opportunities to look at to reduce cost. Again, with the traditional route, you may or may not exercise this. But as Justin mentioned earlier about cost, it's not always, it's usually over budget, right? So as a CM or a GC, you really have to study these, understand what opportunities and how they affect the design. But on a very high level, this is generally what you're working through this value management very, very carefully, because it's very important to get the number to the budget. So again, that's kind of what pre-con on a CMAR versus a traditional design, bid, build approach is.
All right. To continue, services to the owner. Once you get into construction, it's a little simpler. It's stuff, I mean, that y'all probably already know. I mean, the basics, but just wanted to touch on it, that just to get the whole cycle of the project. Pre-con services, more complicated, but just to list them out. Also being paid by the owner to provide construction services, of course. Once you do get it in budget and start buying out the services that the contractor is providing to the owner or developer during construction, starts with permitting, buy out and procure all the packages, all the entire project, get it structured, ready to go, construct the job, and the owner's paying us to manage budget, schedule, and quality during that process. And then finally, they're also paying you to close it out, which can involve commissioning to any level. Pharmaceutical facilities, have even enhanced commissioning and validation, and beyond that, as well as providing documents, O&M manuals for the owner in a clear, concise manner, because there's value right just there. You don't even think about. It's not just get the building done and take off, and then they're paying for a warranty period as well to make sure that it ramps up and works well for the first year or whatever it takes. And then finally, the third section I guess we wanted to talk about was the different owner types that you'll be providing services to. I listed out the things that came came to mind up here, just as examples, and we can talk about the differences as long or as little as you want, but they are very different. Some of the stuff that Reuben was talking about, pre-con services can vary widely on how they're approached and what's important to different owners. Some owners, I mean, the only one on here that, well, the primary one that I can think of, everybody's main thing is cost. I mean, almost for sure. But the one exception to that is there is some data centers are primarily focused on speed, really, because once they decide to build, say, a data center, they look at money in time, really, on days that they're not up and running and producing revenue. So I've built a Google data center. Reuben's been working with Facebook and other guys, and when I've done work for Google, it was the first time in my career that they really didn't care what I told them, what their ideas were going to cost. It was just do it and get it done today, tomorrow. I mean, because while we're talking about it, they're thinking I'm losing money. You couldn't, the way that they look at it, I couldn't spend enough money to surpass what the lost revenue that this data center is going to provide. So that one's a one-off, and even that's changing a little bit as data centers become more typical. That's a little bit less of an exaggerated example that when they were new, but it's still the one example that I could come up with that money is not the top of the priority. Just what does it cost? We got to get to that first before we can do anything. And then you got clients like Clemson University, who would have their own stakeholders. Everybody has their own group of stakeholders, whether it be the Office of State Engineer, approving the funds, the department that we're building for, say College of Business or Engineering, that's the end user. And then there's capital projects involved. They are a stakeholder, but have different, they're tasked with getting the project built. So you're working with all these different stakeholders within the entities. Government, that's a whole different realm of expertise and, being good at paperwork, basically working for a government, whether it be local, state, or federal. Private developers, definitely cost-driven, almost always, because they're just looking at pro formas, making sure the project is viable and that they can make money on it, and speed. They want everything. Corporate has its own unique attributes, needs. Manufacturers, and that manufacturers is a wide range of. Say it's an industrial plant making chemicals, or a first of a kind drug company. You'll have your services to those guys will be just across the board. Infrastructure, roads, bridges, wastewater, and then hospitals have their own also have their own unique needs, of course, being life safety and things like that. And then there's nothing else text-wise here. All I've got is just pictures of examples of these owner types. I think this is a Facebook office, that you'll run into different needs, wants. This is MUSC Hospital downtown Charleston that we built. That's a Facebook data center in Forest City that we work on. Again, just pretty pictures, really. Some of them, just the owner types, just to get a visual. This is a state project that I did in Richmond for the governor's office, and I mean, I can't even go into just the differences of requirements and what you'll be out there working on. Just job site wise too, and how clean and the different standards of pharmaceutical facilities. There's College of Business again, because it's close and got lots of pictures for it and different things you'll have to do. This little hill climb, as we call it, became a little design build project within the project. It's not a design build project, but we ended up having to work with our precaster to 3D model the thing, make it all fit, and so you even got little mini projects within projects. And that's all we've got as far as slides. Did y'all come up with any questions that you want to work on for the remaining time or whatever we spend? Yes, sir.
Go back to reduction opportunity slide.
Yeah. I have to do this because I don't know the guide.
Right there.
This one here?
Yeah. just
Yeah.
Look at that again. And I wanted to ask you for the pharmaceuticals, what kind of specialty mechanical contractors are you using for those, like the industrial guys? What are they? Just anything on it.
Yeah, there are definitely. I mean, I think you somewhat have answered your own questions. There are definitely mechanical contractors out there, especially that specialize in pharmaceuticals, and you don't want just your run-of-the-mill plumber slash HVAC guy just walking in and doing a cell culture or a live I mean any pharmaceutical job. So I don't know how to best explain that, because you're onto something though. Is there's definitely we talk about GCs, we live in the GC world, but there are specialty contractors out there that all they do is work on process piping, and they, because it is so different than loose welding standards, just to get heating hot water into my building at College of Business is a whole world apart from stainless piping for the drug components and ingredients going through. So I don't know. I'm not answering your question exactly, but to your point, there is a whole world of contractors that you have to be aware of in providing services. Say, I mean, we're always talking from the GC standpoint for this example, because that's who we are. But and the owner's going to expect that I have a portfolio or a Rolodex of, I know who to go for those specialty contractors to get the job done right. That's part of the pre-qualification process and the service that we're providing. That was what that pre-qual part means, is you're relying on me the owner's relying on us to know who to get it done right and not use the wrong guy, because that can be absolute just disaster.
And that's part of our pre-qualification process. So if we send it to a mechanical contractor, or we work with a mechanical contractor on a dozen projects, right? We know their capabilities. But they fill out the pre-qualification and say they've done a pharmaceutical project. It's just like us as we're responding to an owner. Say we built this office building or this plant or this data center. It's all about their credentials and what they built before, right? So that tells you a lot about their capabilities.
And we're generalists as GCs. We try to know a lot about, or a little about a lot, or try to be know a lot about a lot, but we can't. And so but I have a go-to. I mean, I call Charlie Dick at EAS when I have a pharmaceutical job, because he lives in that world and he can provide value that the engineers don't even know what's new on the marketplace for air handlers, clean technology, whatever. Those specialty subcontractors come in and help the engineer develop the design. So very early on, we'll get those guys involved as partners and bring them in as assets to the project. So it's a good. I mean,
That's a good question.
yeah, it's an important piece of the pre-con, or the whole contractor services to the developer. Did you have a question?
I'm just curious to know, does it ever happen that you give out a GMP and then the cost is going above that?
Yes, and that's, I guess, think about the term, the guaranteed maximum price. It's guaranteed, and that's the CM at risk part also, is that once I establish a GMP for the owner, it's guaranteed to the owner. And so that risk part is that I exceed it, that's on my own, that's my dime. So it becomes, you're still managing cost for your own incentives too. It turns it into, the good side, I guess, from the owner standpoint of a lump sum project, that he knows what it is, I'm not paying you anymore. That becomes the GMP. Anything above that is my risk. So if I can't manage that GMP, then it comes out of my pocket.
Also, what happens if sometimes there are some other factors like if there is a pollutant in the land or something like that wasn't considered beforehand?
What was the last part? There was what?
The utility that wasn't considered.
Okay, so unforeseen conditions?
Yes. So do you go back to the owner and say that this will be extra added on?
Definitely, yes. And and the better you do laying those expectations out early on, the more that they're not surprised by that either, the owner. I mean, that's how you go from, being just, you want to do that. I mean, that managing of expectations is how you get the repeat work, so that even though you're right, and it's in the contract somewhere, but if you have an owner that I call, well, not unsophisticated, just an owner that, some owners, they have capital programs like Clemson, so they do this all the time, so they're very familiar, they're sophisticated owners. But even your ones that are doing one building every 10 years or less, you want to be, I want to bring that information on, hey, think about this. Just we know that you only do this once every 10 years, so we want to communicate that, hey, this GMP covers X, Y, and Z, but if we run into this, or if you change scope, of course, I can't predict or build into my GMP that you're going to add on 50,000 square feet or something like that. That's not in the GMP. Neither is, other things like unforeseen conditions.
But you can do things to minimize that risk. So if you've got an underground utility, right? Since we're talking about that. We laser scan projects all the time to identify what's in the ground, right? So maybe we've identified it to reduce that risk, and we put monies into the GMP to relocate that utility. As where if we didn't do that, then the risk would be with the owner.
The better you are, the more you do up front to find out, to identify the risk, and at the same time, work with the owner to build an allowance or something that at least is accounted for and helps their end, their financial situation. So at least they've planned for some allowance. So you can manage it, and the better you are, the better you are, that your client looks as well.
And if you're working with the customer, developer, whoever, and you have a site that has some challenges on it, it's good to communicate that so they can have maybe some contingencies on their end to address those gaps, right? Because we're not going to get it all, right? Just because we say guarantee max is for that scope of work, right? And but being able to work together is kind of the key, because a lot of times a designer and contractor and owner work separate from each other, and then you do have a lot of those issues where you have scope creep and cost increases on pretty much every project.
Was the brick in COE, was that in GMP? Like, what was there was a lot of delay.
The brick?
Yeah. Can you?
So, well, we had a situation at College of Business that, because there's so many architects within Clemson University on the steering committee, lots of opinions, lots of decision by committee, so it took a long time to decide on the perfect brick for the building being in a prominent space. So that whole process just drove out and out and out, and nobody wanted to go out on a limb, the way I put it is, and be the guy that picked this in case it didn't work right. Somebody else might phrase it, a little bit different, but we got there, and then when it came in, when the brick arrived on site, actually we had some quality issues that brought up, of the brick, the run of brick that we had, and even some color differential so we basically started over. So it cost money and time to the project that we didn't anticipate. So to answer your question, it was not in the original GMP because it was something we couldn't predict, or very easily couldn't have predicted something like that happening. But if you're working with your owner closely, you can use the allowances, the construction contingency for those things, and not to make it too complicated, but on this project, because we start so early and start letting out early packages to get foundations going, we do what we kind of call a rolling GMP. So I'm establishing the GMP as we nail down costs, starting with foundations and structure, and I haven't even gotten to ceramic tile and finishes yet. So we are establishing the GMP as we go because we didn't have time to wait till it was all there, do one GMP. So we kind of built it as we went. Yes, sir.
So I'm just curious, about the process, especially when you're working with Clemson, like they report to the state. or get a lot of money through state funding. You know, a lot of government organizations want to have that firm price, that lump sum before they award a contract. What does the process look like when Clemson comes to you for, you know, prior to your starting any work to say, hey, you know, we want to build the school business, we want to do it CM at risk, you know, what are they going out kind of soliciting different contractors, or did they go straight to you guys, just say, we want you, sole source, you know, and then do you give them a price for pre-construction services and they have an option to bridge that into construction contracts?
So.
Yes.
Yeah, so generally, the state approves the project from a funding level, right? And
For a total price.
Yeah.
For a total
Like,
price.
for example, at College of Business, $87.5 million is the total project approved project cost. Go ahead.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
that's, in our mind, that's the number, right? And
But that's all
furniture,
things. That's construction,
artwork,
furniture,
everything.
Yeah.
other
And that-
ancillary
and
costs.
Even your pre-construction services are lumped into that?
Everything that is project
when
related.
they come to you initially, they say 87,000 is our max.
87
Or
million,
87
yep.
million, excuse me.
Yes.
But go through the
so
procurement process
so
at Clemson.
Procurement is a little bit different, so they publish that, and then they do a true RFQ process, which says, give us your qualifications, and it would go out to a select contractor or CMAR.
What goes on the street first, because they keep it public, so they
Yeah.
start narrowing it down. So the way I've been seeing it just lately, and they've been tweaking it, and every state does it a little different, but Clemson open it up for qualifications. They'll narrow it down, all these qualifications packages, but here, let me back up. It's qualification based mostly,
Yeah.
with some quantitative measures that they bid on. So they'll take qualifications, narrow it down to whatever, depending on the project size, 10, 5, 3,
Yeah.
and say, okay, you're shortlisted, send your proposals in for the project, you 3 or 4, and you're going to bid on, you don't know, you can't hard bid the whole thing, the $60, $70 million, but you'll say, I want, and this is constantly evolving depending on who's involved, but say, give me your lump sum price for pre-construction services, give me your fee that you propose that you want to do the work, 3, 4, 5%, whatever of total cost, and then a lot of times, more often than not now, they'll say, give me a hard number of your general conditions for the project. Even though you don't know what exactly you're going to build, you know how long you'll be out here, and you should know what your staff is and your ancillary general conditions are. So that's 3 common quantitative measures, and then it'll be qualifications based, and you go through an interview process. Like, we'll be standing in a room with the stakeholders and presenting our case of why you should pick us,
Now, when
based
you-
on a resume.
Sorry, I don't.
No.
When you do the interview process, it's one contractor at a time, right? Just so it's not open interview, everybody's sitting in there like a.
No.
Typically.
Yeah.
There are entities out there, though, I'm sure, that have some different ways of doing it. But typically, it's you get scheduled, you come in, and you present one contractor at a time. And then at Clemson, that night, you'll usually know if you've been selected, because they'll go through their scorecards, score it, all the voting members of the committee, score it, turn them in, and basically that's who it is, unless there's some issue with it.
So generally, it's qualifications, you respond to it, right? And, you gotta be, realistic. Like, if you're a residential builder and you've never done a commercial project, you probably would not get shortlisted if you proposed on a CMAR project on Clemson University campus, right?
Right. And they're vetting bonding, capacity and insurance, things like that
Probably
to
past performance too.
Right,
absolutely,
it's all
yeah.
those
Resume
things.
based,
So
what
then-
you've built.
So you submit that by the deadline, then they select, they go down to a select
short
list,
list,
a short list, and then they give you the criteria that you need for the RFP or the interview process. And then they give you a time slot, you prepare for it, you do your interview, and then they select.
Go ahead.
Do you have a basis of project selection?
What's that?
Do you have a basis of project selection? How do you decide that this project I'm gonna bid on?
Like a red zone.
So how do we figure out what projects we want to do?
Yes.
It's a good question.
Yeah. Every company, like we talked about specialized contractors, GC's the same. We, at DPR anyway, we call ourselves a technical builder, so we're only going to go after what's in our core markets. I don't want to use too much of our lingo, but basically what we think we're good at. So we'll try to focus on opportunities that are within those markets. You know, and some of them I mentioned, university work, data center type technology, pharmaceuticals, office buildings, corporate office, and then, you know, a few other things. So you'll focus you'll focus on that, and you'll pursue projects within those realms with the known customers, and then you'll sell to them. Basically, both, you know, making sure that you're getting involved early enough to be considered for those and be able to respond to RFPs, or maybe sole sourced. You're working with clients that you work with all the time. They might just come straight to us. And
Yeah.
Ruben mentioned something that we use called a red zone. You do no-go meetings all the time to say, is this something we want to, so within my example right there was early on, just making sure we're in the right place at the right time. And then even within that, a client that we work with has a project, we'll meet and say, is it something we want to spend resources and time? Is it safe, smart for us to do? And we'll even fill out what we call a red zone paperwork form, whatever, kind of a criteria-based thing to quantitatively keep ourselves honest from just chasing anything.
Yeah.
Is that the red zone? Say, does this, you know, what margin are we? I don't know the questions on
Yeah,
that
but
thing.
a lot of times it's about, do we have the right team to
Yeah,
build it, right?
yeah.
I mean, just like if you were doing anything in any market, right, or any, doesn't have to be in construction, like, do you have a team to build it? Is the customer gonna pay the bills, right? Are they fun to work with?
Are there risks that we don't want, that we want to get into? You know, like, do we want to take risks on certain projects out there, either financial risks, safety risks, or even risk to reputation? If we're going in and doing something that is just set up wrong, the owner, you know, doesn't have their stuff together, you know, design team that you may or may not have worked with before, or a developer that is involved, or a third party CM consultant or something, a PM consultant that doesn't have our best interest, you know, in you know, at you know, on their mind. So.
Is there any like hard number that you look to go above for a project value?
Look to go above.
Would you go for a $20,000 value project?
No. It all depends on who the client is, where we are, and whether it makes sense. You know, would we travel to do a $20,000 project somewhere?
Sure.
Maybe, but not for the straight, you know, value of profit margin. It would be because that client needs us, so we're going to go there. You know, and then there's no real. Well, there's a max. I mean,
we're $7 billion company, right?
Yeah.
And global. But our average project size is right at $5 million. So, I mean, we have $2 billion campuses that we work on, but we often, I mean, we're doing work at Prisma Health here in Greenville, and we have a master service agreement, and we do $200,000 projects. But that's core market. To answer your question about how we select, is core market is healthcare. It's something that we feel like we can change the world. You know, it's kind of one of our core values, because it's being healthcare and working in a hybrid OR space. We feel like we can make a difference. But if it's a $200,000 job for somebody we don't know, and there's no way that we can meet their schedule demands, then we're probably going to pass on it and give them a recommendation for somebody else.
How does that work? How does you mentioned master agreement with Prisma Health?
Yeah.
How does that work? Like small projects with a total
Yeah.
number of dollars?
Yeah, so we interviewed a similar process. They're reviewed every 3 years. It is working with the healthcare facilities group. So they have projects inside the acute care hospital that they only trust DPR to do. So we're in surgery areas. We're working behind under major infection control, basically guidelines. So we do that for, it's basically, it's the same CMAR that we do here at Clemson with stated fees and insurances. We carry that same process where the hospital sees all our numbers, very, very much integrated. And they just give us a list of the projects that we're essentially negotiating out.
Yeah, really small projects, and those are the ones that pay the bills too. Like those agreements are not as, sexy as the College of Business or something like that, or these big fancy projects. The ones that pay the bills are the ones that were on task order there with agreements, master service agreements inside the hospital. Nobody even knows you're there. That's the way they want it. You're just doing little task order work to pay the bills, switch out mill work, renovate a little suite, and just keep doing it. And so that's a good point of just this whole thing is that most of the volume of work is not pretty, and you get these big projects in between, but most of it's just grinding it out. A lot of it is inside facilities. Nobody even knows you're there. You may or may not have a sign out front or anything like that. Just doing the work and doing it well to pay the bills. You had a question?
My question is related to nominated subcontractor.
What subcontractor?
Nominated subcontractor.
Nominated?
Yeah. So if you see in design bid build, it is common that the owner decides who the subcontractor will be, and then he asks the general contractor to work with him. But is there any situation that has happened in CMA's model where the owner has nominated a subcontractor and has asked the contractor to work with him? So,
Yes.
So yeah, let me add, that's a great question. So what we've experienced is all I can answer. But what we do in our process is we work with the owner to pre-qualify that trade, right? So, and we do that for everything. That's from final cleaning trades to electrical, all to site work, to everything. We're giving them the 3 or 4, maybe even 5 that we know that can do this scope of work based on the dollar figure, based on the type of work we know they can do, their pre-qualification limits, their safety record, all these things. So we work together as part of that process to where we're actually sitting down with the owner and saying, hey, do you have any trades that you know you want to get a price from, right? And so like working with a hospital, they may say, yeah, so-and-so, his company works in a hospital all the time, so we'd like to get a number from him. So we work together to generate that list. And we may come back to them and say, look, this guy can't pre-qualify because he will not share his financials. Or he shared his financials and he's not going to pre-qual with us. So you may, so working together like that.
But there are owners that either we're new to that says you're going to use this flooring contractor, you're going to use this specialty piping contractor. You're the GC, but you're gonna hire him, and I've done that in Aiken, and that's the guys that are in that plant. They're comfortable with them. They know them, and it can be any reason. It could be just a relationship-based thing, or it could be because they don't trust everyone with a certain aspect of the project that, hey, they want them, and we'll take them on. I mean, as long as they're safe. If they're unsafe, we may have something to say about it, and that would be something we would hopefully identify before we took the project. But.
So what happens with the performance measurements if the subcontractor is not performing well? So is it the risk of the contractor, or is it up to the owner?
It could be either way. I mean, depending on your contract type, it ends up being our risk anyway, for the most part. But if we manage expectations with the owner and walk through, hey, either I'll manage this guy, but you take the paper, the contractor, you're adamant, why don't you hire him direct, we'll manage him for our known fee, but you can handle it a bunch of different ways, but as long as you're communicating that, hey, I'm taking this contractor on, but it ends up, I mean, we're low on the totem pole at the end of the day, so we end up taking a lot of the risk and trying to manage that risk.
So, like, going back to stakeholders, getting their inputs, managing stakeholders. I mean, it's easy to say, yeah, we're going to get everybody's input, we're going to make sure everybody. It's not realistically never happens, right?
Right.
So, and in a seeing the risk model, I mean, especially like pre-construction phase, what is y'all's process for managing stakeholder input and making sure that everybody that is supposed to have a say gets their say and understands, and then, you know, inevitably, like Brick, you get those back and forth arguments, you know, so-and-so doesn't like it, well, this other person doesn't like it, then how do you say, look, guys, I've gotta have a decision on this day, or here's how it's gonna impact you, you know?
All right, so, another good question. The answer is depends. I know Dr. B says that all the time. But the short answer is, it depends on the size of the project and the number of shareholders, right, or stakeholders. On a larger project, you might have like a steering committee where decisions on a small level or big level or whatever are reported up to them. And then they steer it towards a decision maker, and you kind of have that process because you can't get all the shareholders in one room at one time. The best way that we have found at DPR speaking is what we call an A3 decision tool. So you put together the pros and the cons of the decision, you put the timeline together, you put the cost, the schedule impact, you put it in basically a 111 by 17, try to fit everything into that A3 tool, and then sit down, make that decision, sign off on it, and then never try to go back and revisit that A3.
What's
kind of
A3?
It's just
The name of
the name.
Oh, the name of that. And I don't, to give you the other side of that, that's more engineering like, you know, going through a decision-making process.
That's the pre-con side.
And I am on the other side of that. I'm more, it's soft skill. It's a soft skill that you get that done. And the strength of your team to know, really give them good information, not exaggerate and say it's a schedule-driven thing. Like, you've got to tell them, the decision has to be made today, one way or the other, right? And you have to just be firm with your stakeholders sometimes and say, and they will appreciate that in the end if you do it tactfully and say, I'm going to hold the owner accountable for decisions, and if you communicate when those decisions have to be made by, that's what they want. That's the reason that's a good question too. Is more than now that I say it out loud is the owner is wanting to pay for that to keep their own people. It could be a group of 20 stakeholders within the organization that the CEO is saying, you got to keep my people accountable. Make sure you have a schedule of decisions that have to be made when and by who. And if you do that effectively, you keep the thing on schedule and on budget. So I don't know if that answers it, but it's a mix of quantitative or something laid out, process flow type things, and the soft skills to know what's important when, or hey, we can make that some other time. We can wait. We can wait.
The key is not to have surprises, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Just like if you're building a house, right? You just don't want the builder to say, hey, here's my ceramic tile installer. I need a color and now, right?
Yeah,
It'd be
and
nice to have a couple, 3 days, maybe a week, to show it to your partner and say, hey, let's get a decision here.
Yeah, you haven't
So we're
done
the
your
same way. So it might be in a weekly meeting where you're saying, here are the topics of decisions that got to be made, and Mr. Owner, you've got 3 days to make this decision, and that's the soft skill part, right? But we
Nobody
also
likes-
have processes that can be like, hey, here's all the things you need to do to make a decision, because that's a lot of the whole.
Well, and even on that, I mean, most of the time, especially on design bid build, it comes in when you have submittals in the middle of the project, and that always holds up the timeline with getting a submittal back to a contractor. You know, I've got 5 different people that need to look at this, and they all have 5 different opinions. When you're doing CM at risk, you're involved with the design phase. Are you able to take those, points in time where you would normally have to put a submittal in on design bid build and say, all right, we're getting to our HVAC, I'm gonna go ahead and submit for all the equipment that we're gonna design in, go ahead and get that approved, that's done, that's out the way, you don't have to worry about it during construction.
Absolutely, yeah. And part of, at a CM at risk anyway, or a large enough job, you'll have a meeting called the OAC meeting, the owner, architect, contractor, typical meeting, either weekly or bi-weekly, that if you're using it effectively, you're communicating to all parties what is outstanding, what's coming up, what they should be, that's where it's delivered, both, and then sending the minutes out, just making sure you're documenting and giving everybody a fair shot to meet their deadlines, not, like Ruben said, constantly coming up to the owner and saying, I need a decision on this today, or the architect. Nobody likes that, and nobody can do their best work that. The further out, the better you are at doing your job, the further out you are projecting and showing everybody when decisions need to be made.
And on real complex jobs, we'll have a dashboard that pops up and says, hey, Mr. Owner, you've got 13 outstanding decisions that need to be made, or it might be hey, you made 12 decisions this week, right? That looks really good. So,
RFI counts, submittals outstanding, all that stuff, and putting it in front of them in some form is it's
then
required.
On the other hand, when a decision can't be made, if you're able to put that in the schedule to show how that affects
Oh, yeah.
the end date, that usually forces a decision pretty quick, right? Not that we play that game, but it does.
Well, you have to sometimes.
It makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was getting at with stakeholders is, a lot of times they don't understand the ramifications of just sitting on a decision.
Yep. Anybody else?
Can you dive deeper, in OAC relationship during construction? Who answers to who? How does it work? If the architect is making a mistake, the CMS risk, who is responsible? Is it the owner, is it the contractor, or is it,
If somebody's making a mistake, where?
like if an architect is making a mistake and then it delays the project, or changes something.
I mean, the best way I can put it is the owner, the architect, and the contractor. Architect primarily as the lead of the design team, but it could be any. I mean, if you're in a manufacturing plant, you might be working directly with an engineer and less an architect. But let's just call it architect. In the CM at risk, delivery method, both the architect and the contractor are working directly for the owner. So, we both have the same client, owner, architect, and contractor. And there's a traditional hierarchy that we also answer to the architect, because the design team is paid to review our pay apps, and at least traditionally, the architect, we're answering to the architect, and we're trying to carry out their design, their vision of the building.
But he's saying more of a mistake, like if
Yeah.
a mistake,
Yeah.
we didn't catch it or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think the answer is not necessarily whose fault, but how do you mitigate that risk, right?
Yeah, and then some of that communication, making sure that
Constructability reviews like we talked about.
the better you do during pre-con, the better you do for all the services we've talked about during pre-con helps the architect design team do their job better. So the better you are as a contractor during pre-construction, the more the architect will appreciate it, because they can do their job better, be more effective, look better in the eyes of their client, who's your client, and then during construction, again, it's communication, making sure you're managing expectations, and then when there's mistakes made, I don't have a good example, but I think everybody's.
You could have design contingencies built into your
Yeah.
right?
You're going to find design problems if you catch them early enough.
Yeah, if you've got a customer who has no idea what what their end goal is, and the architect's still trying to figure out in their mind what they want. You may carry some design contingencies in your number. So, and that's not really to catch a mistake, but as things progress, and the owner wants a more elaborate, electrical system, that may come out of the design contingencies. But for a mistake that's in the field, there's a couple avenues. You could go get monies out of the architect for errors and omissions, right? Which is typically a very cumbersome.
Yeah, you hope that it never comes to that.
It's
really.
a hard process there. A lot of times we just work through that issue, and that's part of being on board early, being on board as a team member. You also have a relationship with that architect, especially in this area. It's a very small relationship-driven area. So a lot of times we'll work through that problem with the designer, because we don't want the designer thinking that we're going to go out and broadcast that they made this huge mistake. We want to work through that detail and be be bullet smart builder enough to where we don't have problems.
And you probably are, and it's somewhat related, but y'all, between estimating classes and everything like that, you probably are familiar with the different contingencies that might be set up. You know, you have design contingency for the owner and the architect to make changes, and those changes usually cost money when you're, especially if you start construction. And then there's construction contingency that we want to have for things that we can't. I mean, we don't pretend to be, you know, perfect, and there's, you know, whether it be unforeseen conditions that we pull money out of there, or actually just screw ups and scope gaps that we just screw up. You want to have that because construction is different than other businesses where, I don't know, there's an environment, an outside environment involved that you can't know everything from day one, especially if it's big and complex. So, I mean, that was a little bit off of what but you made me think about places where those mistakes, if you want to call them that, are drawn from and paid for, still maintaining budget. There's a design contingency for design mistakes and a construction contingency for construction mistakes. So those exist, and hopefully you can manage within those budgets.
So speaking about the contingencies, I just want to know that how do you set up this percentage for different kind of contingencies on different type of projects? Is it related to the risk of the project or return on investment, some kind of that?
I'll let Ruben expand because he's the estimator and how he puts them together, but as far as CM at risk, it wouldn't be return on investment related. It's more what's practical for the project and the budget, and what's reasonable based on what Ruben knows and brings to the table of what, you know, what type of project, where we are within the definition and how much we should carry and the risks that are involved. You know, I think it makes it fluctuate. But
yeah, I mean, in a general sense, usually you have higher contingencies with the less information that you have, right? So if you've got a napkin sketch from an architect, your contingencies in total are going to be higher than if you have a full set of documents that you know exactly what they want. You know, then your contingency would be minimal, right? And the beauty of the way we do this with the traditional bid, you know, hard bid process, you wouldn't have those contingencies, and if they change something, then here it is, change order, right? No, we're not pulling out a contingency. We don't state any contingency. We don't have anything. You get a number from us. But with our approach and CMAR work, you know, you have those stated contingencies, and it usually starts out. I mean, we've seen design contingencies in the very early stages as maybe as high as 8-10%, 10% maybe on a renovation or something, where the designer's just really kind of scratching their head trying to figure it all out. And then that number on design contingency will work down usually over as the design progresses. Construction contingency, on the other hand, usually kind of stays consistent. You know, we may reduce it just to kind of get it to budget because we've just really spent all our efforts and we just are ready to take the risk of reducing it. But generally, I would say it's
what, ours? Ours?
Yeah.
I mean, try to get the more you can work into the contract, the better and more flexible, and less you're likely to exceed budget. So I mean, I'd like to have 10, but I'd more likely get 5, and the designers get 5, and maybe the owner will hold back 5. So that owner will, you know, the one we didn't talk about, owner contingency, even above and beyond that, is for true owner changes of scope. Like I want to add on, or I want to do something completely different. Yeah. So 5, 5, and 5 is, I mean, just a very dumb baseline to think about where it could be more or less on anything. Is everybody holding 5% contingency in a way? Is that wrong?
Yeah,
It's not. There's no. Everything's different, but it's a baseline to think about. Yes, sir.
You guys, how's labor for you guys nationwide? What's are you seeing an influx of people coming out of college, and how are subs doing? Are you missing out on labor? I know I'm asking a lot of questions on.
No, I got you.
You know.
I mean, there's a shortage of skilled labor. Period.
Yeah, we see it.
That's it. And everybody's fighting for the same
projects.
Resources, and lots of projects, and not many tradesmen and skilled labor to do the work. And so it's driving up, obviously, just supply demand stuff, driving up those rates. But I don't know, firsthand if anything is trending upward in getting more skilled labor to the workforce in construction. I mean, I'm sure, the higher wages are driving it up some, but probably not enough at this time to make a dent. So we're all fighting for the same resources.
Are you turning down jobs sometimes? Or?
We're
Yeah.
turning down regions. I mean,
Yeah.
we
I figured
have
that.
we have an office in Savannah that struggles with manpower.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad office, they're not bad people. It's just the trades are not
No one there.
Yeah, no one's there, and it's hard to bring people into that area. And I'm not picking on Savannah, it's a good example.
So are you seeing an influx of people coming out of, say, people in this program, for example, right?
Right.
People coming out and going for office positions, your position, so on and so forth. You seeing a growth in that and a lack in the skill? Is that what's happening, you think?
We're seeing some of that. Yeah, I don't know if we have anything scientific on that.
Yeah, I don't have it, but I would say, from our standpoint in the professional careers coming out of college and grad school, like you're talking about, all kinds of different career routes y'all can take, obviously. But from a GC perspective and our company specifically, the traditional route anyway is either a project management route and a field supervision route. Not even not trades, skilled trades usually. I mean, because that's just not the economics of it. That y'all put a lot of school, money into school. You got to maximize on that, and usually that's a supervision route. Even though there are well-paying, skilled labor positions out there. So even within the PM versus field supervision, there's a need on the field supervision. We always need superintendents. There's a huge deficit of superintendents on the market that are qualified to run work in the field and put it in place. And then there's also that actual skilled labor, the ones with their hands on the work. There's a shortage there. I think PMs, I think that's less of a shortage.
They're down a dozen.
Yeah.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
So it's affecting you guys nationwide?
No,
Absolutely.
it's a risk on every job when we do our risk register. Not just the workforce, but supervision. I mean, I'm doing a project now where, it's a debate over union versus open shop. It's just in an open shop area, and the owner wants to use a union contractor.
Down here?
It's in Tennessee. And they, it's an electrical trade, it's gonna take 600 electricians. So trying to figure out how to work in that area. I know DPR from an entire workforce development standpoint, we've spent billions of dollars in the past couple of years, really trying to figure out how to promote and go into even high schools and middle schools. I mean, as silly as it sounds, we're in middle schools right now trying to say, hey, there is a construction, sector that's really good paying. I mean, we've got these stats. I wish I had it available, but we've got these stats showing like what you can make coming out of high school as a welder, as a pipe fitter, as an electrician, and it's pretty decent money, right? And but we don't see people coming out wanting to do those things because they want to, be a game tester.
My union back home did the same thing. They started a PR scheme to get people involved from high school. They never went to junior high, but from high school because they were seeing the trades are just falling off.
Yeah, y'all. So that's a very real issue that y'all will be working with and dealing with as y'all start to work and continue to work, for sure.
We're doing studies on does it make sense to hire these gamers to run backhoes from their house? I mean,
Really?
Yeah, I mean, run robots and stuff in the field. I mean, it's way down the line. But
Say, because you either,
that's what the shortage is. We don't have people who are retiring. I mean,
in our business, something has to get put in place, and it's either, and it's harder than factories can, obviously mechanize. It's more difficult to mechanize in construction than it is in plants. So, y'all will be working through what I'm not an expert in at all is either or a both, a balance of encouraging and incentivizing folks to go into skilled labor, make it worth their time, or mechanize it, roboticize it, whatever, so that the folks, as we use, devices to do everything, that the work can still get done through means like that. I don't even know what that would look like, other than, robots and things like that. But that's a lot harder on a construction site than it is in a plant. So
That's why you're hearing, ways to mitigate that's what we always talk about. So you're seeing a lot of people go to prefab. So what DPR has done is we have purchased a prefabrication plant in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's totally robotic, metal stud fabrication. It rolls your own studs robotically, welds them together. We're actually doing finished exterior panels, with brick inlays, all these things to keep labor down in the field, right? The amount of man hours down in the field.
With that, have you guys run into problems with you guys in the field putting it together and it not being right from the factory, and then are you losing time and labor in modifying it in the field? Are you losing money, or you think you're making money with that?
So it depends on if you're talking to the BIM guy or, so we spend countless hours in modeling and clash detection and all that to mitigate all of those risks that you talk about. But yeah, we try to leave ourselves play in it, just like anything. It's no different than precast. Look how many precast buildings and steel, fabricated steel is not welded together. A bar joist is not welded together in the field. It is made in a plant, right? And they have the same issues, but they have a little bit of play, right? And they coordinate it carefully. So there's ways to mitigate that, but we still have field issues, just like.
But I would say the answer is yes. You got the problems, and then but it's all different, and it's something that's, maybe it's not the right term to say it's in its infancy. It's a simple concept of prefabricating things, but construction is just so slow to evolve, I think, anyway, with the rest of the world and plant stuff, that we're still figuring it out. We have failures and we have successes also. And then we're trying to just keep getting better at it to be the leader in the movement, I guess, to be on the forefront of prefabrication and just, it's a competition, right? It's who can do it best. We got to do some of it to take that stress off the lack of skilled labor in the field, put it in the plants. We just got to get better at it. So yeah, we lose money on it and we screw up, and we're just constantly working to try to get it better, figure out a streamlined communication to get better at it and get feedback back to the plant to say, we're doing this wrong all the time. Let's fix that. And so we're right in the middle of it, of trying to make it work.
Kind of like a race to the top for you big dogs,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Who figures it out first?
Absolutely.
I know we've talked a lot about it, but it's a good point. It is the biggest problem, right? Is finding the people to do this, what we do, right? But a lot of the bigger projects that we've, I guess, in the recent market conditions, is that we've gone to the owner, and the owner realizes that other contractors have this problem. So the owner and the contractor and the design team, we work on ways where we can improve the job site. So I'm working on a campus right now where they have this flyer that they give to the trade partners on site that says, here is the luxury of this job site. And they give them, we actually give the incentive dollars to the trade partners to give to their craft. And it's things like heated bathrooms, heating and cooled bathrooms instead of just a portable on a job site, right? They have boot washing stations, so nobody boots this kind of thing. They have all these little trails and everything around the job, so your boots don't get mud on. Because obviously that's important to a lot of people.
You guys buying them lunch once a week yet?
It has
Sometimes,
lunch and
yeah,
all these
sometimes
safety
things like that.
incentives. I mean, you get certain, perks. I mean, you may get a shirt a week, or a pair of gloves, or a new hard hat sticker. It's all these programs.
It just boils down to economic cycles too. So right now we're fighting for those resources and having to do whatever it takes to get them to our job, whether it just be straight cash or other perks. And then when we're in a recession, there's people lined up at the gate saying, "I'll work for anything." So I mean, and
And so what we found.
Some of
by
it's not
doing-
new.
What we found by doing that is that people were actually getting offered more money to go work down the street, but they wanna work on our job site, right? Or the customer, however they set that up, because the customer's gotta pay for it, right? I mean, we've gotta convince them that it's worth spending this much for a break area that has sides on it and unit heaters and, you know, a place to plug your phone in, right? And a smoking area, I mean, you get what I'm saying? But we've actually got feedback from surveys from the craft that they would rather, they think it's worth a couple, $3 more an hour working at that campus than working in a mill or, you know, in a hospital, or any other, you know, just, I mean, a tough job. I mean, it's tough what we do.
What else? Anything else you guys want? to just pull this camera up. You probably know we've got it over there, but I don't know how to make it.
Justin, are tours available in this building?
Are they what?
Tours?
Tours.
One tomorrow.
Yeah, one tomorrow. Somebody you mentioned that you knew of it, but if y'all want a tour while we're still under construction, maybe work it through Tanine. Is that okay? Or I mean, we just have to group them up into time slots because we're doing it. A lot of them lately, so I just want to group it up. So if anybody is interested, it's open. Just got to work out a time wise. Either, like I said, the one that's open for tomorrow may have been you already maxed out. Do you know for tomorrow?
I
There's
believe so.
30 spots. Okay, so we can set up another one. Just
Yeah.
Tanine, if you want to be the contact for that, you can tell me.
Yeah, I'll just send them an email.
But I just brought this up to be an example. If you hadn't seen it, I mean, you can see how powerful this could be. Is to have you know, a live feed. Can I make it full screen, Tanine?
Yeah,
Here.
just
Just hit it.
Yep, and there.
So anyway, I mean, we use this all the time. I can pan, tilt, zoom, another technology to spend money on, but I mean, we use it for construction. I run an aerial service to get aerial photos every month as the logistics change on campus. So just other things that we're doing. Again, back to services to the owner. We don't do it for fun. This is a service that the College of Business client wanted because, as you saw me type it in, it's on their web page, and so they're constantly fundraising. So this, you know, builds excitement, does whatever as far as marketing. You just call it whatever you want. Then, of course, we use it for construction and logistics. And then the photos, aerial photos, high-quality photos we'll use and mark up and get RFIs written to get answers on different things. But, you know, all services to the owner that that certain owners want to pay for, certain wouldn't. So, anything else y'all want to talk about? All right.
Where's the gate to that site?
What's that?
One on the side and the back on the left?
There's several.
Yeah.
You get.
Oh, our gate. Yeah, we've got 6 gates. One primary up on this is north, south. We're on the south side. We got gate 1 up by Alumni, which is our primary. 2, 3 to the parking lot up there. We've got one side at Douthit so that we can do different loadings through Douthit, and then we have a gate 6 down here, depending on the you know, the deliveries, whether it's equipment or you know, trailers, flatbeds. They all have different needs. So bring people in different routes depending on what's coming in. We also did this intersection as part of the project, even though it wasn't funded, but we tried to jam it in the budget anyway. So we reworked Calhoun intersection there.
Good job.
Thanks. It's gonna be good. As long as y'all don't close the campus on us right before we want to finish. Yeah.
I think the key for students and you know, coming out to this industry is that it's just truly evolved in the, I mean, it used to be just, hey, we're a builder, right? But now it's really turned into taking that concept of somebody wanting to build something and making it happen, right? Because the design team has had lesser and lesser a role of that, right? In managing it. And I'm not saying we've stepping in and taken over the whole part of it, but it really getting in there and working together as a team
Yeah,
to push this thing.
General contractors like DPR have become more sophisticated. So the owner typically, I don't know, 50 years ago, whatever, would have only worked through their designer or their architect, and then so the contractor, not even work with them. But as we get more sophisticated, they can come directly to us for all these services, and we're kind of, in a way, competing with the design team on certain levels, not directly, but just for who's got the most information, who's got the better information, and who's got the services to provide to the owner, and who's more valuable to the owner.
I mean, architects are.
But it's a healthy competition. It's not. Sorry, I mean it's not anything like architects versus contractors. But there's a competition.
Yeah, I mean, architects and engineers are reaching out for us for pricing twice a week, every day. I mean, we're projects that don't even. I mean, they're not under construction. They're just a thought. We sent some budget stuff this morning. Just our architect had to have something in a couple of hours. So you just have to be real nimble. And again, bullet smart to be able to say, yeah, we just did this on this project in Raleigh. Here's the cost out for that. And as we're historically, an architect may have that kind of cost information. They just don't have it this much anymore. So they rely on their builder relationships.
Anything else?
We're good. All right. Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. If y'all think of anything else, let us know. And like I said, if y'all want to come over, I think working a group through Tanine would be good.
Yeah, I'll work with them.
Okay.
Last thing, I hope you have some notes of this because it's part of your final exam. I have some notes here. I'll give it to Dr. Warren, and I'll post the DVD from them. And really?
I'm just thinking, kind of comparing it to, if you're putting in a proposal for design, it'll be different.
Do I need to stop the lecture capture at all? Or the blue light's off, and it might have happened when I went over the camera. It may have automatically.
Yeah, I knew it.
Okay. That's fine. Did you put my card in there? Or my little thing? You put a
Yeah.
thing.
Can you send that to me so I can
Yes.
give it to Dr.
Yes.
B? And,
Yes.
Oh,
Honestly.
baby.
When's their final? No, it's already done.
Well, Dr. B, if you do good,
Yeah.
you don't have to charge.
Yeah.
You give you a chance. It's not there. No, look.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Hopefully, it was the right level of, hope we got something. Different perspective, at the very least. Y'all know what you want to do? When you're done? Oh, yeah?
My research is mostly in healthcare contamination control, like you were
Oh,
talking about.
cool.
So yeah,
Very
I
good.
mean, and
That
you-
will always be with more and more
I mean,
an issue. That's a good focus, I would say. Something that's got value.
That's what we, I mean.
What do you work on the same thing?
Currently, I'm assisting on Tanine's project.
Oh, really?
And then-
What are y'all doing? SC dot?
Yeah.
We do.
Now we have another from SDOT. So he's doing
Oh,
the
it's a
second
new one? Okay.
My
Did you
project
finish
is-
the other one?
No.
My project is going to start in the month of June or July.
Okay.
So it's on our looking scope of services.
What?
We're looking scope of
Oh,
services.
okay.
we can-
Yeah, and what was part one?
Part one was like the bigger one, so
Yeah.
now they love it, so they want to
break it down.
Okay.
deep dive.
Developing scope of services.
Yeah, so now
For
it's
all,
going.
for what?
Just trying to,
For time?
what is it?
For consultants to say, here is your scope of services, so you nail that down, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good, because that's some of what we talked about here about, well, whoever you asked about whose fault it is. I mean, and you know, so the architect has their contract, and I have mine. And so if you know your contractor, and if you know this business, you kind of know what, I mean, it should be laid out there what your responsibilities are. If you want to be black and white about it. You know, mistake is, if you have to assign blame, then it's there. You can use the contracts and scope of services to say, I bought this, or I paid for this, and you didn't give it. You know, so that's good. That's important. That's important.
Do you have a card with you?
By the way, he's Dr. Musavi's GA. All right.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm going to see him now.
Oh, great.
Might start teaching a course in construction on starting part time in August.
Oh, wow.
No, I think right now we're thinking about estimating one. So yeah, I'm gonna go over to see him now. That clock isn't right.
No.
Yeah. So yeah.
I also TA for construction estimating 1 and 2.
Okay.
I'm still a TA for construction.
Oh, really?
2.
Okay, good. Well, yeah, I'm about to go over and talk to him about the material because Dr. Jackson, you know, set me up to, offer me a job just to, start part time in the fall. So this is the first one he said we have a need to teach.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me what it is. I like this. I don't think I can teach. I can't teach surveying, field surveying. But other than that, I think I feel comfortable. Estimating, we're going to go find out. I don't do it every day, but I mean, estimating one, I better be able to teach. So. If not,
Yeah, I mean, just with,
good.
But I think Dr. Musavi has a good course laid out.
Yeah, I would think so. You know, I've been doing it over and over again. Somebody's got one, and then I'll just make sure that, that I'm comfortable with all the material, and then, or I'll get comfortable with it before we start. So it's just something I haven't done in a while, like that Ruben does every day.
I gotta talk to him as well.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
it's hard to project. That's when funds expire. But to even get people to propose on our stuff, we can't reach out to our contractors. Our perception is even if we put out an RFP and say it's going to be worth this value, we trade it. Negotiate for contract. Like your technical approach, we're not the lowest price. Value that to you, perception is everything to you.
جورایی هست و نگفتم بیاش حالا بخواد یادش بسیده و بخواد
من باش صحبت میکنم. من باش صحبت میکنم.
تو میگی که من نگه دارم من
نه.
چیز هستش نکار
A lot of times when I I'm a technical guy, so I'm going to
من باش گپ
technical
میزنم.
approach. I'm going to
آره یه چیزی هم که بودا 3-4 هفته ببخشید وقتی
And a
3-4
lot of times our
هفته
acquisitions folks
قبلا
will
منم
just
باش
say,
حرف
is it acceptable or not acceptable?
اولین بارم
And so if everything's acceptable, then it goes back to them and they go, okay, everybody's acceptable, this one's the lowest price.
و حتی دم
من نمیخوام پروژکت خوب کار کنم اما خوب کار کنم. امتحان فینال آماده بگید چون بعضی وقتا درسایتون آماده نیست این چیزا تقریبا فینال هم این نوعیه باشه.
امتحان میانترم من بلد تایپ کردنم خیلی سریع
پیپر میگفتن پیپر داشتم.
بعدم یه چیز دیگه هم که بود دیدم که 18 ساله ایشون لیسته من اولین بارم اون قیام زبانم اصلا هنگ کردم یعنی قشنگ
من پیپر کافی داشتم.
اگه دیده بودی که یافتم من یادت باشه بود که یافتم من دیده بودی یعنی قشنگ خونه استرس بودم
من گپ میزنم. من گپ میزنم.
همین 3 ساله هم هست من ایمیل تو بنویس
We'll do the cost part of it later. Like I just want to do, but
از داشتم فکر دارم با دکتر احسان موسوی حرف بزنم.
You gotta balance that, and that's the tough thing. You go low on the general conditions, you go low, then you go higher on your unit rates.
و من آخر هفته یک ایمیل بفرست.
باش. تا جمعه من وقت دارم. اگه حذفش کنم یا نه. ولی
پنجشنبه و من ایمیل من پنجشنبه باش صحبت کردم. من پنجشنبه باش صحبت کردم. اما من جوری صحبت میکنم که چانس داشته باشی. چون فایده ما زحمت کردم.
آره نه من خیلی واقعا قبل از هر هفته میگم فرزانم میشه اصلا تمام سوالا رو بعد از نامه اصلا نمیتونستم بنویسم اینقدر سریع نبودم ولی به این سوالا رو اصلا نرسیدم بخونم.
The determination of what delivery method to use, to how it's awarded, to how it's executed, is all very rigid in how it's spelled out.
بعد اگر که موبایل سوال چیز داشتن میتونم
It is, and that's the.
خیلی ممنون
But,
لطف
and that's why I
کردم.
kind of want to, I'm gonna go talk to the capital project guys here too to see how they kind of, state fund is very
Thanks
similar to
for the
the
help.
federal fund.
You had lunch?
And they, how
Skip it.
they-
If it gets too late, I'll just
Yeah,
go.
but
Skip it.
I don't know
Is
if we can actually get away
Yeah.
with just
Nah, thanks.
going out on the
Appreciate
street
the
saying
coffee,
this is
too.
what it's appropriated for. And do it that C and risk type method.
So how is the
I'm telling you,
virus
maybe
panic in the
it's
job
all
site
traffic.
actually?
What's that?
It
The
is,
virus?
that's our.
The panic
right
about
now is
coronavirus?
we can
Oh,
have
no,
that.
we're
The
not
job
panicking.
site.
I just,
Although the people.
I hope that we don't,
Come work for us.
shut down the job. If the school closes, will they shut down the job?
We have some good contractors
No, it'd be
that
terrible.
work for us, but-
I mean,
Yeah.
just for Clemson, it would just cost so much more money to finish. And it'd be
Yeah, and also
very-
it'll delay the project, right?
Right, yeah, I mean, but,
They're not-
but,
they're not
yeah,
that great.
so it would be not ideal.
But many workers
Because we've got to make sure that we're trained.
Can be, at least we're separated from the rest of the university, so
Yeah.
y'all don't care.
Well, you
No,
guys
no,
think
it's
you got
not
trade
about
issues,
students.
try to get them on base. You guys got federal defense.
But,
students.
I know, there are people, too many people in one area. Yeah, I mean, I guess
Can't get Masons.
if we need to separate
There's
people.
one presumptive case right now here.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got.
For last
we've
night.
got a process now where.
But you know, one is, it spreads easily, so.
Yeah.
Guess we'll do what we're gonna do.
Yeah, we're not sharing these days with
I love the one,
my classmates.
going to visit a sick baby.
What's that?
We're not shaking
Walking
hands
there
with
with
classmates.
Corona.
We're just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind
We're
of
like,
like,
look, we're not-
because we don't know.
We're behind
Right.
this wall.
Everybody's
No, it's
traveling.
behind
Everybody's
that
traveling. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Another
I mean,
area.
and the spring break is coming,
For now.
so these students are like
Two steps
Who?
behind because our guys won't do it.
Miami, Florida, everything. I'm like,
Construction guys don't like shots.
they should cancel. They should cancel the spring break. actually.
Mm-hmm. Good point. But you know what? Oh, yes, no, they should.
X amount of dollars to do.
What's the economy doing?
Two-step inoculation.
Economies.
What's the stock market?
6 out of 10 people won't do it.
DOW is 23,970.
So a little bit
It's a
up.
bit up.
So it's worth.
Nasdaq is a bit up,
And then the project.
8,000. NYSE is 11,376.
And then what happens is it's a small.
Up
town.
about 1%.
Nike's up, Apple's up.
So it's just barely coming.
Barely coming, yeah.
That's okay.
Well,
Once it passes
last week when
by.
I saw that, I just went to my bank and cash out some money in my pocket. I'm like, I need cash in my pocket.
Really? Hopefully everything else.
I don't know about the bank systems in here, but back home,
Oh.
They tell us to stop, and we can't put the word stop.
2012, we had a recession.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Bank couldn't pay you.
Well, no wonder your
Mm,
prices go
Yeah,
up.
it's
Even
scary.
if you have it like in your
Scary.
account.
And so
Yeah.
you take that to the
So
owner,
that's
and
the
listen,
time that I was
we're
like,
stopping
no.
this.
Whenever I see something, just go
And they are
cash
wrong.
out some money.
And they're not putting it up. And then you're scrutinizing. You don't wanna have it.
What time is your meeting with?
Well, he said he went to lunch, and he won't be back till 2:40. So I may have to
No, well, we can't do that.
I may have to come back.
So
You
now
can
we're-
go in, if
Now
you
we're on
want.
this thing like, hey, let's quit
You can,
complaining, let's do like a list.
Wait
So
and
you
leave.
can take-
It's 2 more minutes. That's where you need to do that A3.
Yeah, it's
for
like
their-
10-minute walk to the Lee Hall, then it's like
Thanks
20
for your
minutes.
question, man.
You do a lot of help.
Oh.
We do, but nothing, I mean, not a whole lot here. We do throughout the country.
Oh, Thanks.
Thanks for
Thanks for
coming
having
in,
us.
man.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Thanks for your questions.
Okay.
He's an
I got
H1.
tons more.
Oh, yes?
Al,
Okay.
I'm surprised you didn't ask about drones.
Oh, you know, it's funny. We was talking about taking the aerial photos. I was about to bring up drones. I did. I was
So, we got a thermal drone now.
We got what? Oh, the thermal drone?
We did,
Yeah.
when the hot ski was coming up,
Oh, yeah.
we did a thermal scan. We did a drone that did the thermal imagery of it.
Mhm.
It had point.
Pick up some hot spots.
Point, I mean, you know, obviously where the exhaust duct goes through the hot skid was all over the
I've never
place.
seen a thermal imaging drone. We're flying drones.
Yeah.
That's right now.
All right, with,
Joe.
Joe,
Yeah.
yeah.
We just got our do our 107s and all that day. License.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And but I never worked with thermal drone.
expensive.
Deisha,
I'm sure. Really good drone.
I don't know much, but.
Deisha does our drones for us, and when she was doing Mahosky, she set it down, what did she set it down? in the
She
parking lot?
parked it in the road, and it got
She
hit.
put it in the road, and somebody ran over the damn drone.
Imagine.
It sounds
It's in the
like-
road.
It sounds like
It
you
got
guys need a
hit.
drone pilot.
I know.
Well, she is.
It was
That
repairable,
day she
so-
had a.
I think you can get a FLIR thermal camera for like $2,000 or something.
Is that right?
It's just an add-on to it.
Yeah,
It
it's
is,
all
yeah.
good.
Most, I think most of the drones you can take the camera off. I don't know about those Mavics, but I know like the Phantoms, you can pop the camera off and put another one on.
Hmm.
Oh, I got me a Phantom right now, waiting to start off.
Dude, they got electromagnetic things that'll fly over, like on fixed wing drones, scan for underground utilities. Nuts.
All right, guys, appreciate you. Thank you. Appreciate the question. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
Like mechanical systems for healthcare contamination controls.
Okay.
Yeah, for modeling and that kind of stuff. I was just like going to ask you about details of constructing. How deep you dig into the codes? Do you have your own research team?
We have our own research team that does infection control.
Really?
But mainly for and during construction. So particulates and.
Yeah.
And negative air machine
Oh, yeah.
calculations. The answer is yes. But generally, as related to the design part of it, no. I think is the answer. Would you say that, we got our own team that does infection, like during construction at a healthcare facility. We do the calculations internal for negative air machine.
Okay.
And we do calculations for pressurization, like on an ICRA wall. But like for the isolation part of it, the design of it, we don't do our own internal check on particulates and controls and
I don't know how we're
isolation.
monitoring it. They haven't been in,
Well, monitoring, he's
inside.
talking about the design part of it, right? So we only
Like
do it.
what should be an acceptable level of
So-
certain particulates and everything?
Yeah,
What's
how do you go,
acceptable?
how deep you go into the codes?
I don't know.
That's what
I
I'm
don't
saying,
work
we
in
only
that
do it for the hospital standards for ICRA.
Okay.
Is my answer. Now, if we have a design assist partner, we would do that.
Okay.
And we would generally partner with somebody like a McKinney's or, Southern or somebody like that, who would get into the code of that. But generally, the mechanical engineer would be doing that for the design team. And we would not be in there comparing notes.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of these building around here, RMF. Have you talked to any designers about?
No, not really. I didn't know DPR does a lot of healthcare nationwide.
We do. I bet we have resources that, places where we're doing a ton of hospital stuff. But,
Get with Tanine and can y'all draft up something of what you really need so I can float it around?
What for? I wasn't the good.
No, I can give him.
Yeah, just,
Okay.
get, because Tanine has my email, send it to Justin and I, and we can.
I gotta walk back to the.
Do you have a card?
I did.
Are you going, back to, you're parked at College Business? School?
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yep, thank you.
We're gonna walk back there.
Yeah, you're going to go to this?
Yeah.
Meeting with.
He won't be back till 2:40, so I'm gonna go there and I'll come back.
It is 2:20.
Oh, it's 2:20.
You're-
2:13. he won't be back at his office till 2:40, he said. And so I'm not gonna wait around for him.